Big Q, of course, is going to be the US elections. It's heading towards a photo finish as both the candidates have been fighting it out neck and neck in the race. But irrespective of who comes to power, will it bode well for India and global markets? Nikunj is here with his perspective.
Well, in Hindi like they say that it's kaante ki takkar. In the near term, markets will act and react to the positioning, and it's anyone's guess what the positioning of the market is because the opinion polls are changing, views are changing. Bottom line here is that rather than taking a call based on what will happen today, tomorrow, let's look at the history here. Like they say, history does not repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. And what is the market history? 1 month post the US election, if you look at the data, and if you actually include the impact of GFC, because GFC makes the data look very different because that was an extraordinary time, an extraordinary sell-off, markets, which is US markets, have given positive returns. Now, the 5-year average, 1 month after the US election, doesn't matter whether it's been Republicans or Democrats, doesn't matter whether Senate has been controlled or Congress has not been controlled by one party. The US markets 1 month after the election, all the 3 major indices, Dow, Nasdaq and S&P have given you a positive return, which is very important. Second, what will change? Doesn't matter whether it is Republican or Democrats, what will change? I guess corporate taxes. Trump got corporate taxes down. Fiscal deficits are large. If money printing has to continue, it needs to be supported by inflows. So if there, until and unless there is a big gridlock between the Republicans and the Democrats, I think the direction for corporate tax is headed higher. That will change irrespective of who comes. Illegal immigration, something which is very crucial. Both the parties have really stood by it, that it really needs to be controlled. And then what will change essentially is the stance on Fed, energy and geopolitics. These are the other important factors which would be important. What will not change, which is what we want to bring out. And again, we are saying doesn't matter whether it is Kamala Harris or Trump, Republicans or Democrats, the decision making is being done by a White House or whether it's going to be a joint law which is passed by the Senate and the Congress. I guess the anti-China stance is unlikely to get diluted. Very important, which is a big booster for Indian manufacturing. The China plus one or the anti-China strategy as we call it. Then the fight against inflation, US Fed has said that they want to bring inflation down to 2%. So the US government in a sense is committed to either do supply side reforms or they are likely to do what really could be talked about, demand side reforms. Demand is never a problem in US. I think the supply which could be changed and which could be changed in a very alternative manner because of control in terms of energy and more importantly healthcare cost. Now, if Kamala Harris comes to power, which is a Democrats are voted, Phillips Capital feels that neutral in the short term, long term positive, because you know which way the policy for next 4 years would move. Trump, bit of an odd one out because you don't know what the big decision making ultimately would be. Is it right now a lot of bark and less bite? Is it right now posturing ahead of election, nothing may happen? But generally a lot of brokerages are of the view that Trump means more tariff barriers, and if you are exporting to US, whether it is apparel, whether it is IT, whether it is pharma, these sectors in a sense could see restrictions. There is a mention of some of these points already, but that is somewhere you will see market reaction, so to speak. And now the stock list. The stock list of companies which actually could benefit if there is a huge move which already has started, made in America. So which are the companies which essentially are Indian companies and have a presence in US? Hindalco, the Vari Group, Welspun Group and Bharat Forge. These are 4 companies which directly and indirectly are present in US. Hindalco because of Novelis. Vari set up a manufacturing solar panel unit there. Welspun Corp, they have got a pipe unit there and they are making products there. And Bharat Forge made some acquisitions and is involved in auto manufacturing, auto ancillary manufacturing. So this pack in a sense tomorrow could be interesting because the more made in India narrative you will see, more would be the outperformance in some of these stocks. But it would be an interesting day tomorrow. Next 24 hours, next 48 hours, you may call it kaante ki takkar in Hindi. you may call down to the wires in cricket terminology, and you may call it a cliffhanger when it comes to political terminology.
You can call it all that you want, but you can't really call out a definitive outcome, at least so far. But let's welcome on board Alastair Newton from Alavan Business Advisory to try and figure out what he's making of the chatter so far. Alastair, hi, good to have you on the show. I know that you're pretty much still fence sitting, but what's the gut instinct telling you? Do you think it's going to be a neck and neck photo finish kind of a thing, and will we have to wait longer for a clear verdict?
You know, I very nearly turned down this interview for the very simple reason that I have nothing new to tell your viewers whatsoever. This is a genuine 50-50 election as far as we can tell. Top psephologist Nate Silver published his last forecast based on his model and simulations this morning, and it gave Harris a very, very marginal lead of about 0.01 of a percentage point. You can't take that seriously. It's 50-50, nobody knows. Now, having said that, we could be in for a surprise. The average miss by opinion polls on presidential elections over the last 14 presidential elections has been 2.2 percentage points relative to the actual outcome. A miss by far less than that would give one or other candidate a clear win. The problem is that there is no way of telling before the event, A, how out the opinion polls are, and B, in what direction. So it still leaves us effectively 50-50, and we may not know the outcome until, I don't know, maybe the end of this week, maybe not even then. Keep in mind that one of the most critical swing states, Pennsylvania, in 2020, did not call its result until the Friday after the election. So I don't think investors should necessarily expect that they're going to have a clear picture tomorrow. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, or even the next day, or maybe not even the day after that. And just one more point, and then I'll let you take the questioning back. If the election is called for Harris, Trump will contest it, and there is a possible very narrow path for him to overturn an apparent Harris win.
Okay, perhaps we'll be open to litigation. Don't expect an outcome within a few hours itself. It can take a few more days and really 50-50. But Alastair, the question is right now, what should we even wish for? What do you think is better for emerging markets? Because, of course, you have Mr. Trump talking about putting tariffs on a lot of countries, but then India on a relative basis is expected to do better. What's your take?
Well, I do think we have to take Donald Trump very seriously in his call on tariffs. Now, over the course of the time that Trump has been active in politics, in a high profile active in politics, in other words, since 2015, when he first stood for election as president of the United States of America, he's flip-flopped on a lot of issues. You know, we've heard something from him one day and then exactly the opposite the next day. But if there is one thing about which Donald Trump has been consistent over many, many years, and I'm going back to the 1980s, it's in his public utterances that the rest of the world is ripping America off and America should use tariffs to address its balance of payments deficit. He is likely to be surrounded by individuals this time who are similarly minded. Robert Lighthizer, the USTR in his 2017 to 2020 administration, is a man who is also a deep believer in the efficacy of tariffs for addressing balance of payments deficit. And he is somebody who has the intellectual firepower, as he demonstrated in a very good column in the UK Financial Times last week. He is somebody who has the firepower to turn Trump's vision of tariffs into an intellectually credible argument, that is assuming that you believe in the efficacy of tariffs in the first place, which I have to say I don't. I think it's misguided economics. But Trump and Lighthizer between them, put Peter Navarro to one side, but other key members of the Trump team are going to bring in tariffs. They are not just a bargaining chip. They do deeply believe in them as a means of restoring manufacturing to America. Emerging markets are certainly going to suffer. India perhaps less than most because of the high dependence on services in your economy, but you're still going to take a hit.
Right. But Alastair, tell me, what are the psephologists right now saying about the swing states?
They're saying pretty much they're all close to 50-50 calls, all 7 of them. Now, I could chuck in Iowa after Ann Selzer's remarkable poll at the weekend, which gave Harris a 3-point lead in Iowa. And let's keep in mind that Ms. Selzer has a remarkable track record of apparent outlier calls which turn out to be right. So things are not straightforward even then. But let's stick to the main 7. There's been some movement over the last week or so. It does look like Harris has made some gains in Georgia and North Carolina in particular. Pennsylvania looks to have swung a little bit towards Trump. It's anybody's guess. It's actually anybody's guess. And you asked me earlier about gut instinct. I'm afraid my gut's gone on strike for this election for the first time ever. It's not telling me anything useful at all.
Strike, but maybe by the end of the week it will get that clarity. Thanks, Alastair, for making time and speaking with us. So that's the word coming in, really 50-50 at the moment. No one can really call it. The psephologist and Alastair's own insight on a bit of a strike at the moment.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.